Layla Gray didn't hear the knock at first over the sound of rain pounding against her window. She sat on her couch, a single dim lamp illuminating the otherwise dark room, her hands clutching an overdue rent notice. The month had been brutal. Double shifts at the diner, broken down car, and a manager who thought overtime pay was a mythical concept. The knock came again, sharper this time. Isla froze, her heart skipping a beat. She lived alone in a crumbling studio apartment where unexpected visitors were a rarity and rarely a good sign. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice tinged with unease. "Miss Gray," a man's voice replied, formal and measured. "My name is Nolan Vance. I'm here on behalf of Daniel Cole." The name didn't register immediately. She wasn't sure if she should open the door, but something about the man's tone or the way he said Daniel's name made her stand. Slowly, she cracked the door open to reveal a sharply dressed man holding a briefcase, his expression both professional and unreadable. "Who?" she asked, frowning. "May I come in?" Nolan asked, glancing at the rain-soaked hallway. Isla hesitated. She was exhausted, and this was far too strange. But curiosity edged out caution. She stepped aside, motioning for him to enter. "Daniel Cole," Isla repeated as Nolan took a seat at her rickety kitchen table. "I don't know anyone by that name." "You met him recently," Nolan said, opening his briefcase. "A few days ago outside Jefferson Hospital." It clicked. The man in the wheelchair. She remembered the rain, the struggle, and the way he had quietly thanked her for a ride. "What about him?" Nolan pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table toward her. "Mr. Cole insisted this be delivered to you in person." Isla stared at the envelope, her brow furrowing. "Why?" "Because," Nolan said with a faint smile, "your kindness meant more to him than you realize." Isla hesitated, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in neat deliberate handwriting and a check that made her blink in disbelief. "Wait, is this a joke?" she asked, her voice rising. "This can't be real." "I assure you it is," Nolan replied calmly. "Mr. Cole has entrusted this to you as a gesture of gratitude." "Gratitude," she echoed, her voice nearly breaking. "I gave him a ride." "That's it." Nolan's expression softened. "To you, it may have been a small thing. To him, it was life-changing." Isla's fingers tightened around the check as the numbers stared back at her, far more than she'd ever seen in her life. She felt a sharp pang in her chest, a mix of shock, confusion, and guilt. This has to be a mistake," she stammered, sliding the check back toward Nolan. "I don't deserve this. I didn't do anything." Nolan leaned back slightly, his calm demeanor unwavering. "Miss Gray, Mr. Nicole specifically chose you. It's not about what you did. It's about who you are." Layla's laugh was bitter, her exhaustion and frustration bubbling to the surface. "Who I am? I'm nobody. I'm drowning in bills. My car is falling apart. And my manager treats me like a doormat." "You got the wrong person." Nolan's eyes softened. "Mr. Cole doesn't think so. This isn't charity, Miss Gray. It's gratitude. He wanted you to have a chance to change your life. The way you unknowingly changed his." Isla stared at the letter again, the words blurring as her emotions churned. Daniel had written about how invisible he felt, how her small act of kindness had reminded him that he mattered. She felt the weight of his trust pressing on her, heavy and humbling. "I need time to think about this," she murmured finally. Nolan nodded. "Of course, but Mr. Cole's health is fragile. If you have questions or wish to speak with him, I suggest you do so soon." With that, Nolan stood, collecting his briefcase. As he left, Isla sat frozen at the table, staring at the check and wondering how a single moment had led to this. The next morning, Isla's routine felt surreal. The cramped diner where she worked seemed even dingier than usual, the voices of customers fading into the background as her mind replayed the previous night. By the time she dragged herself home that evening, her body ached and her thoughts hadn't settled. She was about to collapse onto her couch when her phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, and for a moment, she considered ignoring it, but something made her pick up. "Miss Gray?" a faint voice asked. "Yes," she replied cautiously. "This is Daniel Cole." Isla's breath caught. I wasn't expecting. How did you get my number?" "Nolan," he said simply, a trace of humor in his tone. "I hope you don't mind." "No, it's just I don't know what to say." You don't have to say anything, Daniel said gently. I just wanted to thank you again. Layla sank onto her couch, the fatigue of the day catching up with her. I don't understand why you're doing this. I gave you a ride. That's all. To you, it was nothing. Daniel replied, his voice tinged with something she couldn't quite place. But to me, it was everything. I've spent years feeling like a burden, like I don't matter. That day, you reminded me that kindness still exists, even when people don't have much to give. Layla's throat tightened. But I didn't do anything special. Sometimes the smallest gestures mean the most, Daniel said. They spoke for a few more minutes, his words quiet, but heartfelt. By the time the call ended, Isla felt a strange sense of warmth, along with the growing weight of the decision she needed to make. 3 days later, Isla found herself standing outside Jefferson Hospital, her nerves fraying with every second. She called Nolan to arrange the visit, unsure of what to expect, but feeling compelled to meet Daniel in person. The receptionist directed her to his room, and with a deep breath, she knocked softly on the door. Come in, Daniel's voice called faintly. Isla stepped inside, her eyes immediately landing on the man she'd only glimpsed briefly before. He was pale, his body thin and frail, but his smile was warm and genuine. Lila, he said, his eyes lighting up. I'm glad you came, she offered a nervous smile as she approached his bedside. I needed to see you. I still don't understand why you do all of this for me. Daniel gestured for her to sit. His movements slow but deliberate. I know it seems strange, but when you stopped that day, when you helped me, it reminded me of who I used to be. Someone who believed in paying kindness forward. His words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. You didn't just help me get to the hospital, he continued. You gave me a moment of dignity, a reminder that I wasn't invisible, and I wanted to give that back to you. Isla looked away, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. I don't know if I can accept this. It feels too much. Daniel smiled softly. Then don't think of it as a gift. Think of it as a chance to start fresh, to build something better. You deserve that. Over the next few weeks, Isla wrestled with her decision. The money could solve so many of her problems, but it also felt like a responsibility she wasn't sure she was ready for. But as she thought about Daniel's words, about his belief in her, she began to see it differently. This wasn't about deserving or earning. It was about honoring his trust. Slowly, she started to make changes. She paid off her overdue bills, fixed her car, and began volunteering at a local shelter. Inspired by Daniel's example of paying kindness forward, each step felt like reclaiming a part of herself she'd lost along the way. Layla's life began to shift in ways she hadn't imagined. The financial relief brought a sense of stability she hadn't felt in years. But it was the emotional weight of Daniel's gesture that truly spurred her forward. Her volunteering at the shelter quickly became more than just a way to give back. It was a place where she connected with others who, like her, had once felt unseen and forgotten. Over time, she became a vital part of their community, organizing food drives, coordinating donations, and listening to stories that reminded her how powerful even the smallest acts of kindness could be. But not everything came easily. At the diner, whispers started circulating among her coworkers. A few had noticed her fixed car, her lighter demeanor, and a subtle but noticeable improvement in her wardrobe. Guess you found yourself a sugar daddy. One of the waitresses joked, her tone more biting than playful. Isla ignored the comment, but it stung. She wasn't ashamed of Daniel's gift, but she wasn't ready to explain it either. How could she make them understand that this wasn't about money, it was about hope? One day, as Layla was finishing her shift, a man walked into the diner and sat at the counter. He was tall with sharp features and an air of confidence that set him apart from the usual crowd. Coffee black, he said, flashing her a polite smile. Isla poured the coffee. Her curiosity piqued. First time here, he nodded. I heard about this place from someone who said you make the best pie in town. Isla smirked. We might. Depends on who told you. The man chuckled. Nolan Vance. Her hand froze mid-pour, her heart skipping a beat. You know Nolan? Yes. I'm a friend of Daniel's. He extended a hand. Jordan Price. Isla hesitated before shaking it. Isla Gray, what brings you here? Jordan's expression softened. Daniel asked me to check in on you. He's been talking about you a lot lately. Isla felt a warmth in her chest, though it was tempered by concern. How's he doing? Jordan's smile faltered. He's hanging in there, but his condition's getting worse. The words hit her harder than she expected. She had only met Daniel once since that first encounter, but the bond they'd formed in such a short time felt profound. I want to see him, she said quietly. Good, Jordan replied. He liked that. Isla visited Daniel the following week, bringing along a small potted plant she'd picked up from a local shop. It wasn't much, but she wanted to brighten his hospital room. When she walked in, Daniel's face lit up. He looked thinner than before, his skin paler, but his smile was as warm as ever. Lila, he said, his voice weak, but filled with genuine joy. She set the plant on the windowsill and pulled a chair to his bedside. I figured this place could use a little life. Daniel chuckled softly. You've already brought plenty of that. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. Isla told him about her work at the shelter, the new friendship she was forming, and how much his gift had changed her perspective. Daniel listened intently, his eyes filled with pride. I knew you'd do something amazing, he said. I just needed to give you the chance. Isla felt tears prick at her eyes. You've done more for me than I can ever repay. You've already repaid me, Daniel replied. Just by being who you are. As Isla's life continued to improve, she couldn't escape the memories of her struggles. The night spent crying in the dark, the humiliation of begging her landlord for extensions, the constant ache of not knowing if she'd make it through another month. One evening, as she sorted donations at the shelter, she came across a young woman with tear-streaked cheeks in a battered suitcase. Are you okay? Isla asked gently. The woman shook her head, her voice breaking as she said, I don't know where else to go. Isla sat beside her, listening as the woman poured out her story. A string of bad luck, toxic relationships, and a crushing sense of failure. It was like hearing her own story from years ago. You're not alone, Isla said firmly. And you're not invisible. You're going to get through this. The woman's tears slowed as she looked at Isla with a glimmer of hope. That night, Isla realized that Daniel's kindness had created a ripple effect. His gesture had changed her life, and now she was in a position to do the same for others. A month later, Isla received a call from Jordan. Daniel's condition had worsened, and he had been moved to hospice care. Isla visited him that same day, her heart heavy with dread. When she entered his room, he looked frier than ever, but his eyes still held the spark she'd come to admire. Isla, he said, his voice barely a whisper. She took his hand, holding it gently. I'm here. Daniel smiled faintly. I have one last request. Layla's throat tightened. Anything. Keep making the world a little brighter, he said. Promise me. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded. I promise. Daniel passed away a few days later, leaving Isla with a profound sense of loss and an even stronger determination to honor his legacy. She continued her work at the shelter, expanding their programs and becoming a voice for those who felt unseen. The small house Daniel had left her became a sanctuary for people in need, a place where kindness and second chances thrived. Through her efforts, Isla saw firsthand how one act of kindness could ripple outward, touching countless lives. And every time she felt doubt creeping in, she remembered Daniel's smile, his unwavering belief in her, and the promise she'd